so this lesson is going to be on school culture and climate. And so our objectives for today are about the end of this lesson. You should be able to describe the concept of school culture and school climate and identify components of school culture and school climate. Determine how these factors impact school quality. All right, so school culture characterizes the district-wide organization. So we're talking about the entire district or the culture of the district, what the district is like, what they believe, those sorts of things. So it reflects the shared ideas, the assumptions, values, and beliefs that give an organization its identity and standard for expected behaviors. All right, so components of school culture is artifacts and symbols, so the way its buildings are decorated and maintained, the values, the manner in which faculty function and interact, and the assumptions, the beliefs that are taken for granted about human nature. All right, so all these things kind of play into what the culture of a school is, or the culture of any organization is, and it's why it's so hard to change a culture, why it takes so long to change a culture, because artifacts and symbols have all been there obviously for a while, and whatnot, and so you need to look at the buildings, what kind of shape they're in. Obviously, to remodel a building costs a lot of money, so it's sometimes very difficult for schools to build new buildings or update buildings, fix buildings, those sorts of things. And the values for faculty, how they interact and what they do. Obviously, if they've been doing something for a very long time, it's hard to get them to do something different. And so those values take a long time to change, as well as the beliefs of the individuals that are involved with that school. All right, so uh, when we look at school culture, one that supports learning, when we look at artifacts and symbols, the building and surroundings reflect the children, their needs, and their accomplishments. So we're looking for a culture that provides what the children, what the students need, and supports their accomplishments. And so it's going to have awards and those sorts of things displayed. We're going to have things on the walls that might support their learning, or at least it goes along with lessons that they're doing, those sorts of things. And then a culture that impedes learning for artifacts and symbols. There's a little that reflects an emphasis on children and their education. So basically, if you walk into a school and there's nothing on the walls anywhere, um, the grounds haven't been kept up with, so the grass is overgrown and there's weeds and those sorts of things. You walk in and nobody wants to be there. Nobody's excited about being in a place like that. So it actually is going to impede a student's learning. All right, so values. When we look at values that support learning, administrators, teachers, students, and parents participate in decision making. So everybody should be involved in the decision making process, from administration to teachers to students and their parents. And that's the big thing. Oftentimes, administrators make all the decisions and leave teachers, students, and parents out. And sometimes administrators and teachers are making decisions and leave the students and parents out of that decision-making process. Everybody needs to be able to feel like they have some value and some say in what's going on, and that will help support a culture of learning. So when decisions are made without participation of teachers and parents, that impedes the learning of students overall. And people aren't as excited and aren't as proud of a school where people are left out of that decision making process. And so some assumptions and beliefs that support learning. You wanna find a place that all students can learn, or where it's believed that all students can learn, where parents want their children to succeed. You'd be surprised sometimes parents uh, don't care about student success so much. They just want to be left alone and want their kids to be left alone. And so that's not usually a good thing. But you also want to find parents who are partners in education. So they're willing to do things outside of school um, to help reinforce what's being done in school. And so making sure kids do homework and make sure kids are at school every day and on time and those sorts of things. So assumption beliefs that impede learning. Then some students are incapable or too lazy to learn. When you start to believe that, then students start falling through the cracks, or when parents don't care, like I was talking about earlier, or when parents know nothing about education, so they don't have any kind of background for what you're trying to do at the school. Those sorts of things impede learning. All right, so school climate. This characterizes the school building and classroom. This reflects the physical and psychological aspects of the school and provide preconditions necessary for teaching and learning to take place. This is the physical environment is welcoming, conducive learning. So I already kind of talked about that with the culture. So the climate does impact the culture. And so it's also the social environment that promotes communication and interaction. The affective environment promotes a sense of belonging and self-esteem. And the academic environment promotes learning and self-fulfillment. So we want to make sure that the physical environment is welcoming and conducive. The lawns are taken care of. The buildings are in good shape. We want a social environment that promotes communication and interaction. So students and teachers are interacting with each other. Teachers and administrators are interacting with each other. Students and administrators are interacting with each other. And everybody feels comfortable communicating and interacting with everybody involved with that school. When you start to have cliques and students don't feel comfortable with other students, or students don't feel comfortable with teachers, then that is obviously a negative climate to be involved with. Then also you want to make sure that students have a sense of belonging and feel like they're cared about. So that goes to that affective environment. And then of course we want students to know that learning is a good thing and that we want to help self-fulfill them through their academic endeavors. So a physical environment that supports learning, limited number of students, versus a large number of students which would impede learning. So a class of 15 to 20 for a teacher is not too bad. Obviously the smaller number, if we have 5 students or 10 students, then much more learning can take place, but on average 15 to 20 students is a decent sized classroom. If you go into a classroom that has a large number of students, so I would say over 30 for one teacher, then that starts to impede learning because there's a lot less that you can do and a lot less activities and engagement that can take place with classes that size. It's not uncommon for larger school districts to have closer to 100 students in one class. And so that starts to be a lot more like what you would see in core classes for universities. The math and science and history type classes where you have the giant 300 seat lecture halls. Obviously, those are not great ways to learn, but it's a great way to get students into a class and make some money, right? I probably shouldn't say that about universities, but obviously we do know that the smaller the group, the better the learning environment is. We also want students to feel safe and comfortable, whereas if students are harassed by other students throughout the building, that's going to obviously take their mind off of learning and not help them learn as much. Classrooms should be orderly, so things should be in place and neat and organized. Whereas if they're disorganized, that just creates a chaotic atmosphere and is much more of a struggle for students to learn in. The grounds should be clean and well maintained versus dirty, poorly lit, or poorly maintained. You want a low noise level versus a high noise level. That's why if you walk into a lot of newer school buildings, old school buildings, obviously a lot of tile, tile on the floors and walls and hard walls and whatnot. But now if you walk into a school, it's not all that uncommon for a school to have carpet on the floor and the walls because it helps reduce the noise level throughout the building. The classrooms should be visible and inviting versus overcrowded and protected from scrutiny. And then you should have sufficient textbooks and supplies. So there should be enough supplies, textbooks, whatever you're needing, materials for every student. Whereas when you start having to share supplies among students, and that's also obviously an impediment to learning as well. All right, so we're looking for a social environment where interaction is encouraged. We want students to be interacting with each other, interacting with their teacher, interacting with faculty administrators. And we want teachers and students to actively communicate. We want teachers to be collegial, and we want them to get along and work together versus being isolated from each other. Obviously, that's not an ideal situation when teachers don't even want to associate with each other. That does not create a social environment that is conducive for learning. We want student groupings to be diverse rather than self-segregation. So we want students to feel like they have a place where they belong. and not feel like they're excluded from something else. Decision making should include teachers and students, as we talked before, rather than all decisions being made by central administration. And staff and students are trained to prevent and resolve conflicts, um, so that things can be de-escalated quickly or taken care of before they even arise, versus having lots of bullying, conflicts being ignored, and those things leading to much more detrimental situations later on. All right, so an affective environment that supports learning and interactions are caring, supportive, and respectful. So it's not that you're just interacting with students, but that there is some genuine interaction, that you can show that you care and support them. Students need to be able to trust their teachers. Morale should be high, so people should be excited about being there. Schools open to diversity, so they celebrate people's differences, and then people are respected and valued. And then there's a sense of community, or parents perceive the school as warm, inviting, and helpful. All right, so an academic environment should have an emphasis on academics and all types of learning styles. So we don't want to exclude any students from learning because they have a different type of learning style. We want to try to find a learning style that fits for them. And then teaching methods respect different ways children learn, and expectations are high. We're going to talk more about expectations and why you should have high expectations a little bit later on in another lesson. But set high expectations and don't falter from them. That will be one of the biggest things as a teacher that you can do for student success, is to set high expectations and hold on to them. And then continually monitor students' progress so that you know where they're at and you can know how to get them to new levels. Give prompt feedback. I attempt to give feedback as soon as I can, and as much feedback as I can with my classes. Sometimes I don't get that feedback back as soon as possible, because sometimes it takes me a little longer to get that feedback done, so it's not very prompt. But I do it as quickly as I possibly can, so that students have that feedback and can continue to grow from it. Achievements praised and performance should be rewarded, so let students know when they're doing a great job. And then teachers should be confident and knowledgeable. Alright, so positive school culture and climate is the cornerstone of all good schools. You want to develop good climate and develop good culture, so that your school can move forward and produce quality students. This fosters excellence and moral character and unifies faculty, students, and parents around a common mission and commitment to quality, which shapes students' achievement and character. So, a good, positive school culture and climate produces great students. Regardless of the background, when students enter a culture that demands and supports quality work and moral character, they tend to work to fit into that culture. That's a quote from the Character Education Partnership, and it's something that I do believe. And it really goes back to what I was saying about setting high expectations. When you demand and support quality work and moral character, students will rise to that level of expectation. So that's a quick overview of school culture and climate. Just kind of have a general idea of what those terms mean, and maybe some examples of how they might be implemented